BTS Global News Exclusive. Seoul, October 2025. There are moments in Seoul that feel almost unreal. When the air carries a quiet pulse that only a few can sense. When the ordinary becomes cinematic. It was one of those days. The city was alive with weekend rhythm, sunlight cascading down narrow streets, bicycles gliding past cafes, and people crossing the same intersections they had crossed 1,000 times before. Yet somewhere in the middle of that ordinary hum, the atmosphere changed. Not because of a planned event, not because of a camera crew or a press announcement, but because a figure dressed in black was walking down the crosswalk as if he owned time itself. It was Jungkook. Not the Jungkook of flashing lights or roaring crowds. Not the stadium Jungkook or the festival Jungkook. This was the version of him that exists between the headlines. Quiet, solitary, grounded, and yet impossibly magnetic. The afternoon sun hit the gloss of his leather backpack, and for a brief second, Seoul's midday glow seemed to bend toward him. The black cap hid his expression, but it couldn't hide his energy. It never could. There was something almost paradoxical about the scene. Simplicity wrapped in luxury, calm hiding a heartbeat of thunder. His oversized black cargo pants swayed lightly with each step, creating a rhythm softer than a whisper. The silver glint of the Balenciaga chip keychain caught the light, swinging lazily from his bag. It wasn't just an accessory. For anyone else, it might have been a detail easily ignored. But on Jungkook, even a small metal keychain became a statement. The internet would later discover it cost $925, a limited edition Balenciaga piece that looked deceptively simple, almost ironic in its resemblance to a potato chip, but crafted with brutalist precision and exclusivity. The image spread like wildfire within hours. A single clip uploaded by a passerby, just a few seconds of Jungkook waiting at a crosswalk, became the talk of the digital world. Fans didn't need an announcement to know it was him. There was something unmistakable in his stance, the quiet power in the way he simply existed. The world had seen Jungkook in countless forms: performer, vocalist, dancer, athlete, artist, but the version that walked the Seoul streets that afternoon was something different. It was the Jungkook who didn't need a stage to command attention. The backdrop was ordinary: cracked pavement, a soft blue wall, pedestrians lost in their own worlds. But the way he fit into it, effortlessly, silently, made the ordinary scene shimmer like a movie still. Some said the video reminded them of the beginning of a film, where the hero is unaware that his presence alone sets the story in motion. Others called it the most expensive casual walk in K-pop history. Yet beyond the humor and the hashtags, there was something profoundly human about the moment that he wasn't hiding. He wasn't performing. He was just being. And yet, that just being was enough to stop the internet. The Balenciaga keychain became the symbol of that day, not because of its price, but because of how it hung loosely from his bag, unbothered, swinging like a quiet metronome in the rhythm of Jungkook's stride. Every motion of it seemed intentional, though it wasn't. That's the enigma of Jungkook. How he can make the unintentional look cinematic. How his simplest gestures can carry the same emotional weight as an encore. Reports began to emerge about his presence in the area. A few fans mentioned spotting him around a coffee shop earlier. Others claimed he had been filming something small, maybe a behind-the-scenes project or a casual vlog. But HYBE remained silent, as they often do when it comes to Jungkook's personal outings. Silence, however, didn't slow the storm. It made it grow. The air of mystery around his quiet Seoul appearance took over every platform. Tweets multiplied into theories. Photos became frame-by-frame studies. Some fans zoomed into the texture of his backpack, the black Balenciaga classic, and others debated whether the pants were custom-tailored. It wasn't vanity, it was fascination. Because Jungkook, even when walking across the street, seemed to carry the whole mythology of BTS in his silhouette. Under the warm October sun, his shadow stretched long across the crosswalk. It was a hauntingly beautiful contrast, the dark figure in motion, swallowed by a world too bright. There was something poetic about the sight of him moving through normalcy, almost as if he was reclaiming his own rhythm. No choreographer, no cameras, just him and Seoul. The hum of the city replaced the cheers of arenas, and yet, it felt like the same music. Somewhere behind him, two pedestrians walked by, unaware that the man beside them was one of the most recognized faces on the planet. They continued their conversation, glancing briefly at him, then looking away, and for a fleeting second, Jungkook was invisible. That, perhaps, was the real magic. Not the fame, not the money, not the luxury keychain, but the ability to exist quietly within the chaos of normal life. Still, the photo told another story. Because even when he wasn't trying to be seen, he couldn't help but radiate that as the afternoon progressed, sunlight began to shift into gold. The buildings around Itaewon reflected the fading warmth, and Jungkook's silhouette began to soften against the glow. His steps were steady, almost meditative, as if he was walking not just through Seoul, but through memory. His recent schedules had been relentless: global performances, brand shoots, endless travel. But in that moment, under that light, he seemed to breathe differently. There was peace there, rare, precious, fragile peace. Later that evening, fan accounts began stitching the scene into poetic threads. "He walks like art," one post read. "He's proof that confidence doesn't need noise," wrote another. In less than 12 hours, the tag hashtag Jungkook in Seoul trended globally. Yet what fans were celebrating wasn't spectacle, it was simplicity. The beauty of a moment that might have passed unnoticed if not for one pair of observant eyes. The photo's color palette became a story of its own. Monochrome tones of black and gray set against soft city hues. It was almost as if Seoul had become his stage, and the sunlight his spotlight. His outfit, casual yet perfectly proportioned, played into the quiet power he carries so effortlessly. The Balenciaga accessory hanging from his backpack reflected not vanity, but a kind of artistic irony. A $925 charm shaped like a potato chip, worn by a man who has tasted both the simplicity of youth and the surreal weight of global fame. Luxury, in his hands, becomes statementless. He doesn't wear it to show off. He wears it because it fits his rhythm. Observers later noticed something else. The way his hand brushed the strap of his bag, the slow pace of his steps, the way his head tilted slightly downward, as though deep in thought. Some fans speculated he was listening to music, maybe one of his own demos, maybe something unreleased. Others believed he was just lost in the pulse of the city. But the beauty of Jungkook's presence is that he doesn't need to explain. He allows people to project whatever story they want, and somehow, they're all right. What set this moment apart from the rest of his public appearances was its purity. No production, no styling team, no grand announcement. Just a man walking through a familiar city, dressed in black, carrying a backpack, his hair tucked under a cap. And yet, that sight became headline news across the globe. That's the paradox of Jungkook. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, and the world can't help but watch. By the time evening settled, the crosswalk was empty again. The city returned to its rhythm. Cars passed, lights flickered, conversations resumed. But somewhere in the digital ether, millions of people were still replaying that same few seconds. The sway of his jacket, the gleam of the keychain, the ease of his posture, all captured forever in pixels and memory. For Army, it wasn't about what he wore or how much it cost. It was about who he was in that moment. A reminder that behind the fame and chaos, Jungkook still moves through the same streets as everyone else. That even with the weight of global expectation on his shoulders, he can still pause at a crosswalk, under sunlight, blending into the rhythm of his hometown.